Okay, it's February 9th or February 4th, 2019 update. It's about 9:40 in the morning, roughly. Storm continuing. So last night, after last night's vlog entry, I went to take a nap. I managed to fall asleep about 2 a.m. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. The power was out. The place was pitch dark. I activated the battery-powered emergency lights in the house and made my way to the wood stove, and it's a good thing the wood stove had burned down and was on its way more or less to being out. I rekindled it and had to drag in some more firewood. No big deal, but at any rate, temperature was about, like I said, it's about 18 degrees out at that time. Now here at 9:30, it's gone up to possibly 20 degrees maybe. There is no wind here. However, the area along the coast has been stricken with wind gusts and these nor'easter outflow winds out of Canada. They come from the Fraser River Valley, and apparently that must have been what knocked out the power. But there's no wind damage here, and there's no wind even here, thankfully. I'm very thankful for that. We've seen some terrible windstorms over the years, but the good old Mount Baker and the surrounding Cascade Mountains are our wind wall, and we stand on one side and it protects us from these horrible Arctic outflow winds which cut down across the province of British Columbia, Canada, following the path of least resistance, the Fraser River Valley, and then just pour out across the flatlands of Washington State and across the Puget Sound area. Favorite target for these winds are the San Juan Islands and the interior outlet of Admiralty Inlet, along with the Olympic Mountains facing to the north and east over on the Olympic Peninsula. I was trapped in such a storm back in, it was effectively December 1990, right around Christmas time, with my girlfriend at the time, Lisa. And in that event, the outflow was horrendous. It wasn't a matter of hours, it was a matter of days. For about 2 solid days, 48 hours, in that instance, there were winds that were sustained of about 60, 70 miles an hour, just roaring, and gusts of wind that had to have been up probably to 90 or 100 mile an hour. The damage done on my property at the time was tremendous. There also appeared to be some kind of a Arctic tornado which was spawned. It cut a path, like a alleyway or a corridor. It was visible by air from aircraft after the storm, and it cut across the south end of Orcas, across the north end of San Juan, moving westward. It went it cut all the way across the channel between Orcas and San Juan, and cut across the north end of the San Juan Island. I was right in that alleyway. On my property, we had 100-foot tall pine tree. It was a fluke. Never found another pine anywhere around on that property, or maybe not even on the whole island. Though I think there might have been one near the entrance to Snug Harbor on the west side, but they just weren't there. Anyway, this pine tree was a huge pine. Well, this thing got twisted and split vertically up the middle, and the two halves thrown back down to the ground. Yeah, it was completely destroyed. Meanwhile, there were literally dozens of fairly large diameter hemlocks and firs, as they did still have fir trees over there then, which were destroyed and just scattered around the place. So it was a motherfucker, basically. The wind chills were down around -40. That was hell. And after the first 2 days, there was no subsidence, but rather the wind speeds lowered down to sustained winds of probably 25 to maybe 30, with gusts up to about 35, 40. And it stayed cold as hell for another 4 days. Then it began to moderate, and then no sooner all of this, a couple of days later, after some normalcy returned, we got hit with a second nor'easter outflow. Nowhere near as powerful as the first, but effectively power had been restored for merely about 2 days, and we got hit with the second one. And yep, out went the power again, and more deep freeze, Arctic powered bullshit. It was horrible. My girlfriend and I were sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags in the downstairs area, primarily out of fear that trees, or predominantly a huge fir in the front yard, would simply fall over on us. That fir was something like, well, it was 4.5 feet across at the base, possibly more. It was a very large, very old tree. It didn't break, thank God, but it was so incredibly cold, and those winds were absolutely awful, and it was an absolute hell. I mean, my girlfriend told me later, that all night, as we lay there in our sleeping bags on this tiny little living room floor, that she basically couldn't sleep because she kept hearing the sounds of trees cracking and falling over. And these are big hemlocks and firs, as I mentioned. Yeah, there were about 5 of them, various diameters, crisscrossing the entrance, my driveway. Yeah, and then all across the length and width of the property, there were more. In fact, most of them, they fell a certain amount, and then, but not quite all the way to the ground. And those things ultimately wound up being cut up for firewood, and many of them wound up over at my parents' house or at my own house, and supplied us with a lot of our firewood for a few years to come. Interesting. So at any rate, now I've been reading the weather forecast, and effectively the wind's going to taper off in areas it's affecting, and it's going to get really cold tonight. It's going to get down to around probably 10 degrees maybe. No snow and no no wind. It's very cold. So the snow we've got is going to stay around. And then they say that'll be the way for, well, through Wednesday. And then later in the week, another disturbance or storm is going to swoop down upon us, and they can't tell much about it yet, but it looks like more of the same. Whether it's another nor'easter or just more cold and some snow in the lowlands has yet to be seen. It's just, this thing's supposed to show up on Thursday, Friday, so on. So at any rate, we'll wait and see. But at any rate, I'll continue, and I'll make another update later on as conditions warrant. So until then, yeah, take it easy.